Hey guys, it's me, Anna, and I'm doing another video this year for National Eating Disorders Awareness Week. I did a video last year where I talked about some general eating disorder stuff and a little bit about treatment and about what eating disorders are and what they can look like. And this year, I'm going to be answering questions that people sent to me. I put out on my Instagram story asking for if anyone had anything they were curious about eating disorders, any questions that they wanted to ask. And I'm really grateful for the people who responded, and I'm going to be answering some of those questions today. A little different from last video, this one will be more personal, so I'll be speaking primarily through my own experiences, which means that it won't necessarily resonate with everyone who struggles with an eating disorder. And that's okay. And I want to put that out there in the beginning because I want to make sure that everyone who's struggling knows that their eating disorder is valid, even if it doesn't look exactly how mine looks. So now that I've put that out there, I am excited to jump into these questions. So I'm going to start with the first one, which is, what is your personal journey with your eating disorder? And that one, I feel like I can make a whole documentary about it, but I'll try to answer it in a succinct fashion. I put a lot of thought into how I would answer that question because it's difficult for me to pinpoint a beginning of my eating disorder. But when I was reflecting, I think it stems pretty far back. In high school, I had a lot of issues with being very empathetic to the point where I would hold people's stuff and it would just consume me. And that led to a lot of issues with self-harm and depression and anxiety, where I was having a really hard time processing holding all of these emotions. And on top of it, I'd be really hard on myself if I felt like I messed up. And it carried that with me through high school into college, and I think it was really at the end of college that my eating disorder got really bad. I had gotten, excuse me, it's the morning, so I'm going to drink some coffee. But my eating disorder started getting noticeably worse near the end of college. And I think part of that, I was having a really hard time. I had a couple pretty negative living situations where I just felt like I didn't have control. And my eating disorder stems a lot from needing a sense of control. So that really compounded and made me struggle a lot. And then from there, I probably had about a year or so where it went completely unchecked, and some people would express concern, but I managed to kind of lie my way out of any repercussions in terms of having to go to treatment or seeing someone about it. But then I met with, who was at the time, a new psychiatrist, so a new prescriber for my medication, and this is where I have a lot of privilege that comes up in my eating disorder story, but she just kind of looked at me and made an assessment from my appearance and then asked some leading questions about my habits with food. And it came to light for her that I was seemingly struggling, and so she suggested to me that I check out this place called Walden, which is an eating disorder treatment facility. She made it sound really nonchalant, which I appreciate. Otherwise, I don't think I would have done it. She was like, you just call. You can set up just a meeting with them to kind of assess where you're at, and they'll let you know. And at the time, I was pretty solidly convinced in myself that I didn't have an eating disorder. I was convincing myself that I was fine. So I was like, okay, I'll humor you. I'll go and you'll see. They'll say I don't need anything. Not the case. I went. They recommended me into partial, which is 30 hours a week. So I think it was like 8:30 to 2:30, 3:30 every day. And we would do breakfast together, snack together, lunch together, and groups all in between that. So I started with that after some dragging of my feet, and I was told, oh, it'll probably just be a 2 to 4 week thing. Wasn't. I ended up being there for months. I got recommended to a higher level of care, which was a residential treatment facility, which is 24/7. It's kind of like apartment style living where you're cooking meals with each other. The next steps, that's what they call it. The next step above that would be inpatient, where it's more medicalized, and that's where you might see things like feeding tubes and so forth. So to try to summarize it a little bit, I was in residential, I would go back down to partial, then I would go back to residential, then I would go to partial, then I'd go to IOP, which is like 10 hours a week, intensive outpatient, and then go back up. It was pretty much just a non-linear journey of back and forth of me graduating treatment, and then ending up back in it. And that's actually really common for a lot of people who do seek out treatment or who are able to receive treatment. I have a lot to say about treatment that could be saved for another video, because if I go into it, I won't have time to answer the questions. But treatment typically is ruled by insurance, which turns it into a pretty bullshit situation for a lot of people, where insurance will just stop covering them, or won't cover it at all to begin with, and it really acts as like a gatekeeper for a lot of people. So I'm grateful and blessed that I was able to receive treatment, and that people were able to look at me and see me and be there for me and encourage me to do it. And I just want to honor that it's not accessible for everyone, which I mentioned in my last video. But yeah, so that was my journey. I've been out of treatment for like a year now, I think. And that doesn't mean I'm not still doing work, which I will get into with one of my questions here. But yeah, so that was kind of my own journey, summed up as short as I can make it. Yeah. So I think with that, I'll move on to my next question. Put that there, feature my copy. This is a really good question. How do you wish people responded? That's a good one. For myself, I was pretty lucky that people in my life responded pretty positively when I started talking about having an eating disorder and about treatment. The people in my life were there to support me in whatever way they could. It didn't mean that people always did it, quote, right or in the way that felt right for me, but people wanted to help. But I think, to answer broadly, I wish people responded, not just for myself, but for others, with compassion and a willingness to learn and try to understand. Because for people who have not had an experience with an eating disorder, it can be really difficult to get it, because a lot of it seems really irrational, and a lot of it is, but that makes it difficult for people who maybe don't interface with that a lot to understand that it's deeper than just whatever behavior is happening. So whether that's someone who's struggling with restricting their food intake, or binging, or purging, or exercising, I think for a lot of people, the thought process is like, well, why don't you just eat? Why don't you just stop binging? Why don't you just stop purging? Why don't you just stop exercising? Or even some people I know have experienced where people actually encourage those behaviors, where they're like, oh, but you look so good, but you've lost so much weight, or like you're exercising, that's so good for your body. And receiving that feedback even after having been open and clear about their struggles with an eating disorder. So yeah, I want people to respond thoughtfully. Think before you speak. And that doesn't mean that you have to be on eggshells all the time. And people will say things, everyone will mess up. Having even been in eating disorder treatment centers for over 2.5 years, I still say the wrong thing to people sometimes. And sometimes I catch myself and sometimes I don't. Or I don't catch myself until later. So you don't have to be a perfect support person. You don't have to have a perfect response. But be thoughtful in what you say. And with that, I would say be mindful about your language too. That includes a lot of weight talk and food talk. So, like commenting on someone's weight, just don't do it. Just don't. Especially if you know that they're either in their eating disorder or in recovery. And it's not that people are always trying to be malicious about it. In fact, people typically are not trying to be malicious about it. But comments even like, you look so healthy, or you're looking so much better, or, like I said before, oh, you've lost weight, or you've gained weight, it's unhelpful most of the time. And most people who are struggling with an eating disorder are probably, not always, there have been times where I'm not, but oftentimes aware of weight fluctuations. They don't need to hear it from someone else, even if it's well-intentioned. Because when you're, especially in recovery, hearing something like, oh, but you look so healthy, can start a whole spiral of, well, does that mean that I've gained weight? What does that mean? That means I look different. And in another direction too, eating disorders people who have eating disorders can have all different body types. So there are people who have experienced others saying, you look so healthy, in a way that is feeding the eating disorder. So people who have lost weight through behaviors, who are at a heavier weight beforehand, at a weight that society would call unhealthy or fat or whatever, people who are experiencing that and then hearing you look healthy because they're using behaviors, that is really dangerous and unhelpful. And I've spoken with people who have heard that even from medical professionals, so doctors, when they go in, who say, oh, keep up what you're doing, like whatever you're doing is working, you're losing weight. And even people who have been open with their doctors about how they're losing weight through behaviors like restricting, purging, exercising, like over exercising, and doctors are like, well, just keep whatever you're doing, just keep up the good work. So be mindful in that sense. And then be mindful too of what you talk about in front of people, especially people who have been struggling or are struggling. Like saying stuff like, oh, like, I'm going to have to go on a run after I eat this to burn off those calories, It's not helpful to hear. And that's part of how I wish people responded, and maybe even checking their own stuff. And I also have compassion and empathy for people who are maybe struggling, who aren't aware of it, or who have these narratives that have been put in our head through society and through what's deemed desirable or appropriate in terms of body type or exercise, dieting. But I wish people responded maybe with a little bit more mindfulness around what they're saying and their own stuff. The next question that I have is, how do you keep yourself aware of signs that you're having trouble? Really good one. These are all really good questions. I guess every question I'm going to say, I'm like, this is a really good one. How do I keep myself aware of signs that I'm having trouble? I am lucky to have the privilege of having a team of people. So I have a therapist, I have a psychiatrist. A lot of people who go through this journey have a nutritionist. I do not have that. Insurance didn't cover it. But I also have groups that I go to. So I go to an alumni support group through the treatment facility that I was at. And then I have a couple other groups that I joined as well. And so having this team, especially my therapist, which it took probably 3 or 4 therapists before I found one that I really vibed with. I actually used to work at the facility that I went to. But having a team of professionals who can keep me in check, who know my story, who are educated in the therapeutic or medical model. Sorry, there's an airplane going overhead. I don't know if you can hear it. But yeah, having my team is really important, and even that team including groups. So my eating disorder support group, people in that group have been through the same thing as me or struggling with the same stuff and can offer a perspective that maybe I wouldn't have thought of. It's really discussion based and group based, and it's helpful in that sense. I also attended Survivors of Suicide Loss group after my sister died, and that group helps keep me in check emotionally, kind of being able to talk about in a supportive space whatever might be going on, because that sort of stuff, my emotional stuff, affects my eating disorder a lot. And then I have a group that I meet with just through the Unitarian Church, and it's themed every month. Like, we have the theme of generosity, joy. We have the theme of living with uncertainty, and that group is really helpful too, just in processing. So I am a huge supporter of group therapy and group or support groups. Having people who have experienced similar things being able to discuss with you and kind of help you maybe even notice if you're having trouble, because sometimes I'm not aware. I also have people in my life, like my support people in my life, like my partner, my family, friends. And for those people, one thing that's been helpful is giving them, sometimes it's a physical list. In the past, it's been a physical list, and now it's a little bit more just like a verbal thing. But when I'm doing okay, it doesn't have to be like I'm doing great, but when I'm not in the moment of struggling really intensely, making up a list and giving it to people in my life of these are signs that I might be struggling. So if I'm withdrawing from activities, if they notice that I'm maybe skipping meals, if I'm having like a really hard time communicating, that's a big one for me. Like if I can't find the words to express what's going on, those are some signs that I might be struggling. So giving the supports in your life a list so that they know the signs, it's like a clear thing for them to reference. And then also giving them a list of things to do if they do see me struggling. So I've given lists that have contact information for people on my team. So like my therapist number. I had my partner go with me to my to like a psychiatrist appointment at one point, and he was able to meet my provider when I was in treatment. I also brought my partner to meet my clinician. So just there was a face to the name, and then when I gave the phone number and their information, it didn't feel so awkward to call them if he had to. And also giving like these are things that might be helpful to say to me if you see me struggling, and these are things that aren't. So like if I'm sitting down trying to do a meal that I'm really having a hard time with, having a list of ways to communicate that I'm typically more receptive to, and then even a list of like, please don't say this, that has been really helpful, because not only does it give me a solid grounding way to like reflect on myself and think about what is helpful and what is not helpful, it gives the people in my life some grounding too, so it doesn't feel so scary, because it can be really scary to be a support for someone who is struggling with an eating disorder. So holding myself accountable, and then having the people in my life also hold me accountable, and giving them the resources on how to hold me accountable. Because checking in with myself is also a part of it, where I, having been in treatment, I was given a meal plan that is too confusing to really get into right now, but it gave me an idea of what I like should be eating every day. And I say should because for me, the rigidity of the meal plan did not always work in my daily life, where I would get so perfectionist about it that I was like, well, I missed this, so the whole day's a wash and I'm not doing the rest of it. But it did give me like a baseline guideline of like, you should be eating somewhere around this and somewhat these things. It was broken down into like proteins, fats, carbs. It's too confusing to get into. But and I don't use that meal plan anymore. Like I don't reference it every day, but it's good for me to check in with myself and kind of think about, okay, where am I at as compared to what my meal plan is? And for folks who have never had a meal plan, even just kind of checking in, sometimes it's helpful to, it's hard to find, quote, normal eaters. That was like a big thing in treatment. They were like, surround yourself with people who eat normally, and it, that will help normalize eating. But it's, in this society, it's pretty hard to be a normal eater, quote, or find people who eat normally. But I guess kind of like thinking about, okay, what do people who eat, quote, normally eat in a day? So breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks in between, how much? Because it's very easy when you're deep in an eating disorder to justify a lot of behaviors around eating, or to think to, I know that when I was really deep in my eating disorder, I'd be like, I ate so much. And then I look back now and I'm like, was not even close to your meal plan, you know? And so it can be hard to check that yourself. So that's where it's helpful sometimes also to have someone else who has a more normalized eating pattern or behavior, who can kind of check the facts with you and challenge the eating disorder brain of what's normal and what's not. All right. This next question. Does food always seem like a burden, or is it possible to actually like food when recovered from an eating disorder? Wow. For myself, it's a really non-linear process, like for most people. And it's hard for me because determining when I feel like I'm in recovery versus when I feel like I'm in my eating disorder is challenging for me. There are sometimes where it's really clear to me. Typically when I'm in my eating disorder, it's a little more clear to me that I'm struggling. But when I'm feeling like I'm in recovery, even then, it fluctuates from day to day. There are some times where I do feel like I can enjoy food, and that I am enjoying it, and that it's not a burden to eat. And then there are days where I would consider that myself being in recovery, where I don't enjoy eating and it does feel like a burden. And I get frustrated all the time because I'm always like, I have spent years of my life trying to relearn how to eat and trying to like pretty much with some of my sole focus being on eating, and yet I still struggle if I'm not paying attention. There are days where I will unintentionally just not eat enough or just forget to eat, or I'll get to like 3 or 4 p.m. and I'm like, oh my god, I have not even come close to my meal plan. And that's actually really a frustrating thing for me, because I get pretty hard on myself, where I'm like, you have been working on this for so long and you're still messing up, and that's where self-compassion comes in, and trying to remind myself that this is like an ongoing lifelong journey, and just trying to do better the next meal. But yeah, and then personally too, I have a lot of leftover eating disorder stuff, and stuff that started even before my eating disorder. I have a lot of issues where I'm really scared of food making me sick, especially like eating certain food groups, or I get really worried about how food is cooked, and that limits my dietary choices, especially like when going out to eat. So I feel like that's a large aspect for me of not being able to fully enjoy food or having it seem like a burden, because I'm wrapped up in these ideas about being scared about food making me sick, or like I have issues sometimes where I think that my food is poisoning me, which is an ongoing thing that I'm working on too. But yeah, so I would say it doesn't always seem like a burden. Not always. But it definitely still does in many ways. And it depends on the day. It depends on the meal. Like I can have, even within a day, I can have one meal that like feels really impossible, like last thing on earth I want to do, like last thing I can do. And then the next meal is just totally fine, and I enjoy it, and I like it, and yeah. I'm hoping that I'll get to someday where food rarely feels like a burden. That's a goal for me, but I would not say that I'm there yet. And then this is, I think, my last question that I have that I wrote down. How do you lift yourself up when you're feeling down? I was about to say, that's a good one. I already said that about every single one. Reaching out, and whether that be to friends, to family, to my team, whatever way, that's a really big one for me. And similar to what I said about setting stuff up, like a list for the support people in your life of like, what is a sign that I'm not doing well? What's a sign, like how, what should you do if you see these things? I used to get really pissed off when I was asked to do this in therapeutic settings. And it's actually really helpful, is to try to make a list of things to do if you are feeling down, that you can easily reference. Because if you are in the moment and you're just trying to produce ways to feel better or things to do, it's pretty hard in that moment of struggling. So having something set up ahead of time. So I've in the past made like a list of places for me to go. So if I had like downtime, like living out in Western Mass, like the Book Mill is really nice. That's a place where I can be entertained for hours and it's really low key. List of people to call. For some people that's helpful, for some people it's not, especially for people who feel like they don't maybe have folks they can call. I want to honor that can feel discouraging. So only if that works for you. Groups. I intentionally going into this winter, because I have a really hard time in the winter, and knowing that this being the first winter after my sister's death, I set up so that I had evening groups. I have my weekly eating disorder support group. I have my monthly suicide loss support group, and then I have a monthly group that I go to through the Unitarian Church. So I mentioned those all before, but those are things where I've just made them part of my routine, and I do them every week or once a month, whatever they are. That has been helpful to me because it's being surrounded with other people in a discussion-based thing. They're free, and wow, classic Anna, my storage was full, so my video cut out. But anyway, to finish the question that I was answering, I think I left off at having groups to go to. Distraction is also really helpful for me when I'm feeling down, and kind of allowing myself to lean into that. So whether it's listening to a podcast, watching a TV show, listening to music, just doing those things and allowing myself to do it, because I have a hard time a lot of the times where I feel like, oh my god, I'm being unproductive, or I should be spending my time some other way, this is wasting my time. But actually leaning in and letting myself feel what I'm feeling is pretty important in helping me when I'm feeling down. Because sometimes when I'm feeling down, I just need to lay on the couch and watch TV. And there are times where that's not true either. There are times where it would be better for me to get up and do something, or especially if I'm avoiding stuff, it can be good to challenge myself to do it or to face it. But totally respecting that there are times where I just need to sit in my feelings. And then my last thing that I use to help myself when I'm feeling down are DBT skills. DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a form of therapy that's focused a lot on allowing things to exist at the same time. So instead of saying, I don't want to eat this meal, but I'm going to do it anyway, is saying, I don't want to eat this meal and I'm going to do it anyway. It allows there to be space for like the I don't want to do this, but also honors the and also honors the and I'm going to do it. And that can be useful in a lot of other things, like being like, I am really mad at you right now and I still love you. You know, it allows for both of those things to exist together. I purchased my own DBT skills training handouts and worksheets. This was a big thing when I was at treatment, was DBT therapy. It's used a lot in helping with changing behaviors. It's used a lot in substance use therapy, as well as eating disorder treatment. And I think I've been hearing about these DBT cards that you can get, almost like a card game, but like I think that they have different skills on them for you to use, and you just kind of pick one out. And I'll have to look more into that, but something like that could probably be helpful for people. Again, I could write or record a whole video about DBT skills. Maybe I will at some point. But some of the ones that I find the most useful are checking the facts. So that would be like if I'm sitting there being like, this meal that I'm trying to eat is like way more than I should eat in a day. It's ridiculous. Like, whatever. The stuff that came up in treatment a lot, especially when I was faced with my meal plan, checking the facts that it's actually probably not. For myself anyway, in my personal experiences, checking the facts that like I do need to eat every single day. Humans do. I would tell myself humans don't. Humans do, in fact, actually need to eat every single day to live their fullest and best and most healthy lives. So checking the facts and practicing self-compassion is really challenging, but kind of like what I was saying before, meeting yourself where you're at. Yeah, and then distraction is a DBT skill as well. And then just some other ones like having something to hold, like when I'm really anxious, you can get, there are specific like toys that are for it, like tangles or putty and stuff that you can play with. But even like sometimes, what's in my hair? Sometimes I'll just take my hair tie and like play with it. That can be a good way to dissolve some anxious energy. There's also, we did a lot in treatment of holding frozen oranges or holding something cold. Could be a good reset if you're feeling overwhelmed. And my final one that I recommend to everyone is throwing ice. You can throw ice cubes. It is like throwing a plate when you're really ticked off, except it's ice, so it doesn't matter. It just melts. Like, you don't have to clean it up at all, and it's the same satisfying feeling. So when I'm feeling really overwhelmed or mad or angry or sad, take a tray of ice cubes, or if it's winter and there's ice, you can just huck a big chunk of ice, and that is a really helpful skill. So I'm going to finish this up before my storage fills up again. This is maybe a sign that I should deal with that. But I want to thank everyone who watched this. I know this is a pretty long video, but I really wanted to be able to answer all of these questions that I was really excited about. Thank you to everyone who asked me a question. I'm always open to questions. I would love to do more videos like this, so please always feel free to send them my way. They'll remain confidential. I won't share who said what to me. And yeah, and I just want to, put out there to the world that eating disorders are hard and they can feel impossible to get out of when you're in them. And there is hope for a happy and full life, and that doesn't even equate necessarily being, quote, recovered. I don't know that I'll ever be recovered. I think that I'll be in recovery for ever. And that's okay. And I just want anyone who's struggling right now to know that you are valid, that there is hope, and that if you have not reached out, or if you even are considering that maybe you have an issue and no one else has noticed it or validated it to you, or even invalidated it, like if you've gone to people with your concerns and gotten shut down, don't let that stop you. I encourage everyone to seek out support, even if a treatment facility has turned you away or shut you down, or medical professionals. You can always reach out to me through my website and my email. My website is inbloomlifecoaching.com, and my email is inbloomlifecoach@gmail.com. And you don't have to want to work with me. You can just send me an email, and I'm here even just to listen. But yeah, I encourage everyone to reach out, even when it's scary, even if you've been shut down, and to hold on to hope, and to know that you're valid in whatever you're going through. And even if other people can't see that, it doesn't mean what you're going through isn't real. And yeah, I love you all. Thank you for being here with me and for making it through this super long video that I'm really happy that I was able to record and share with you. All right, I will talk to you all soon, and happy National Eating Disorders Awareness Week. Bye.